morning, Year 5. Couldn't remember if it was the morning or the afternoon. It is day 24. Am I right? 24? I think I'm on 24. At school again today. We've got 9 of us in today in Year 5 and 6. We're on chapter 7 of The Boy Who Fooled the World. The next morning, let me just check the time so I know how long I'm going to go. The next morning I woke up to Dad thumping on the boiler again. I texted Mason to knock for me on his way home from school, and then I had a really quick cold shower. It's surprising how quickly you can wash when the water is so freezing it hurts. Mum had left for work already, and Dad said she would be really busy for the next few weeks, trying to find new homes for all the exhibits. At 8:10, the doorbell rang and I shouted bye and ran out the door. Mason was late, so we'd have to walk quickly. "Sorry, I overslept," he said as we headed down the road. "Dad, didn't you get back from Tokyo until midnight?" Oh no, Dad didn't get back from Tokyo until midnight, and I stayed up to see him. He was tired though, so he wasn't very chatty. I took a sideways look at him, but he was just staring down at the pavement. He got me this. Look. He pushed up the sleeve of his coat to reveal a jet black glossy watch. He tapped the face and it flashed neon blue. "Cool," I said. "Haven't you already got a watch?" "Yeah, but this one's a newer model," he said, pulling his sleeve back down. I glanced at my own wrist. I wasn't wearing a coat and my school jumper was frayed at the cuffs. I quickly rolled the sleeves up to hide them, even though it was cold. Mason watched me. "I've got a couple of jumpers I've grown out of if you want them," he said. "I can check if Mum has thrown them out or not." "Nah, don't worry about it," I said. "It's no big deal," said Mason. "I can bring them in tomorrow." I could feel my face beginning to burn. "It's fine," I said sharply, looking away. Mason didn't say anything else as we walked in silence for a while. We turned down the road where our school was. So Mason's obviously just trying to do a nice thing by his friend, but clearly Col is a bit embarrassed. But nothing to be embarrassed about. If my friends had very expensive clothes they didn't want, I definitely would take them off them. Miss Smith often gives me her clothes that she doesn't want anymore. "Hey Mason," I said. "When was the last time you went to the museum?" "Where your mum works," said Mason. "Not for much longer," I thought. "Not since the time we went in primary school, about 6 years ago." "Why?" "It's closing down. Mum's going to lose her job." Mason frowned. "Oh no, that's too bad. Sorry, Cole." I shrugged. "I know, but I've got an idea. Do you remember seeing an old painting in there? One with things to solve hidden in it?" Mason thought about it for a bit. "Nah, I just remember the mummies in the gift shop," he said. "I bought a flashing yo-yo." "Well, my mum told me about the painting yesterday. It's like a treasure hunt and there's a prize at the end." Mason frowned. "And no one solved it," he said. "No, lots of people tried years ago," I said, "but now everyone's just forgotten about it." Mason laughed. "There's probably a reason for that. Like maybe it's impossible, or maybe it isn't," I said, smiling. Mason sniffed. "What's the painting called anyway?" "An enigma in oil," I said, "and I'm going to solve it." "Ha, of course you are," he scoffed, but he stopped laughing when he saw my face. "Seriously?" he asked, as we walked through the school gates and into the playground. I nodded. "Why not? And you're going to help me." "Am I?" he said. "What makes you think we can solve it?" There was a thump from behind us. "Oh, watch it, Mozart," shouted Noel. "Sorry." It was Isla. She looked like she'd accidentally crashed into Noel. She had her school bag over one shoulder, her PE kit bag on the other, and her cello case in her arms. As she walked towards us, the cello slipped and she had to duck down to stop it falling on the floor. "The handle's broken on the case," she said. "Sometimes I wish I'd played a piccolo rather than a huge thing." A piccolo is a small recorder sort of thing, or it might be a small flute, one of the two. She started to laugh, but it came out like a snort. Mason and I stared at her and I smiled. She wasn't someone that we hang around with, and she quickly put her head down and rushed off. Mason turned back to me. "She's so strange. Anyway, about that painting. Someone's got to solve it, so why not us?" I said. "I need to find that treasure, Mason. I need to help Mum and Dad." I wonder why he keeps bringing up Isla, so I feel like she might turn into an important character later on in the story. So chapter 8, going to the museum. As we walked to the museum after school, I realised for the first time just how grand it was. The old Victorian building was made out of rust-red bricks with tall, white-framed windows, and beneath each window frame were draping garlands of flowers carved into the brickwork. I'd never noticed them before. On either side of the entrance were 2 orb-shaped lampposts welcoming visitors in on dark days. "Look," said Mason, pointing to a poster by the entrance. "Last chance to see. Come and say goodbye to our amazing artefacts from around the world. Free entry." We walked up the steps and into the foyer. There was a welcome desk on one side, but nobody was behind it, so we headed through the 2 carved wooden doors that led into the main hall of the museum. Mason gasped. "Oh wow," he said. The room was filled with glass cases containing every stuffed wild animal you could possibly think of. Lions, crocodiles, otters, badgers, buffaloes, foxes, rabbits. There was even a giraffe in a really tall case that stretched up to the roof. I remember Mum saying that stuffing animals, or taxidermy, was really fashionable in Victorian times, and people didn't seem to think it was cruel back then. She said that there had been a debate about whether the displays should be destroyed, but it was decided that they should be kept for a historic and scientific interest. Some of the stuffed animals were now extinct. I remembered the smell from when I last visited. It was musty and dusty smell, the kind that made your nose tickle. I remember this, said Mason, stopping by an overstuffed rhinoceros. Some thieves broke in years ago and sawed a horn off. They got in through a skylight. It was in the papers. The story of the stolen rhino horn rang a bell. I read her sign. Apparently a rhino's horn can be really valuable, and the thieves knew exactly what they were doing. In the article it said that her name was Rosie, and that the people working in the museum at the time had replaced her stolen horn with a plastic one. The museum was incredible. Why had I left it so long to go back? And now it was all too late. The collection was going to be split up and sold, and the beautiful old building would probably end up being turned into posh apartments. I can't see the famous painting anywhere, said Mason, looking around. Come on, let's go upstairs and see if we can find my mum or Dr. Sabine, I said. But don't say anything about us trying to solve Enigma in oil. I want it to be a surprise. The upstairs gallery was full of stuffed birds, thousands of them in cases. We stood in front of a large cabinet containing seabirds, all perched on a rock that made it look like they were just gazing out onto the ocean. There was a tiny mesh speaker by the floor which played the sounds of crashing waves and the cries of seagulls. I stared at a large girl with yellow eyes and a fierce-looking beak. "Ah, Carl," said a voice. How very lovely to see you." Dr. Sabine was walking towards us carrying a large cardboard box. I hadn't seen her for years. I waited for her to say something about how much I'd grown, but she just smiled. I liked Dr. Sabine. "Your mum's in the office. Do you want me to get her for you?" she asked, putting a box on the table. I shook my head. "No, it's okay. Mason and I just thought we'd come and have a look around. Mum told me you're closing down. I'm sorry." "I'm sorry too," said Mason. Dr. Sabine sighed. "Thank you. We tried our best, we really did, but it just seems that people aren't interested in museums anymore. Well, not in this town anyway." Mason and I fidgeted a little. We were those people. Dr. Sabine opened the flap of the box and it was full of old books. "Are they from the museum?" I asked. "No, these are my reference books," said Dr. Sabine. "I can't leave them behind. It would be like abandoning friends." She picked one up and gently wiped the cover with her hand. "Did you know that this museum was famous?" she asked. "We made the front of all our national papers once." She put the book back and rummaged in the bottom of the box, taking out an old newspaper. It was yellowed with age and looked quite fragile. On the front was a drawing of the outside of the museum with the headline, "Museum's Mysterious Painting Waiting to be Solved." I heard Mason gasp. "Is that the painting that contains some kind of riddle?" I asked. "My mum told me about it." Dr. Sabine smiled. "Yeah, that's right, an enigma in oil." The museum curator back then was very clever about publicising its mysterious message. It caused an incredible amount of interest, and people came here from all over the country to try and solve it. I guess it was the Victorian version of going viral. "What's an enigma?" said Mason. "An enigma means something that is mysterious, or a puzzle," she said. "Look, that's the artist right there." Next to the article was a photograph of a man with a large moustache. Mason read a paragraph out loud. Artist Basil Warrington Jones, 54, said of an enigma in oil, "One simply has to look for 4 clues in my painting that will lead them to the riches." There is much speculation about what treasures the painting will lead to, but Warrington Jones has confirmed that the rewards are substantial. Mason looked up, his eyes wide. "And nobody managed to do it?" I asked. "No one solved the painting and found the treasure?" "No," Dr. Sabine said, folding up the newspaper and placing it on top of the books. "There was a great deal of fuss for a few months, and lots of people tried, but over time the riddle of the painting was forgotten." She folded the lid of the cardboard box over the top of the books and unpicked the end of some brown parcel tape. "Oh, where's the painting?" said Mason. "It's downstairs in the foyer. You must have passed it on your way up," she said. I nodded casually, and then Mason started to do some kind of weird overacting thing. "Oh no, is that the time?" he said, looking at his posh watch. "We better get going, Cole." He nodded his head towards the exit door. I glared at him. He was really overdoing it. "Thank you, Dr. Sabine," I said, as we edged away. We headed down the main stairs that led to the foyer and began to walk down the carpeted steps. "Substantial reward, did you hear that?" I said to Mason. I knew this had to be a good idea. A reward like that could change everything for my family. When we got to the foyer, we looked around. "There it is," said Mason, pointing to a wall. I stood up and looked upwards. Hanging above the entrance doors was a very large oil painting in an ornately carved rust-brown frame that must once have been shiny and golden. There was a small forest of trees on one side, and at the front was a stream dotted with floating leaves. Standing on the right was a smart-looking man. He had a mop of brown hair and a large moustache, and he was wearing an old-fashioned suit and tie with some strange, brightly coloured feathers pinned in a bunch on the lapel of his jacket. He stared out at the painting with dark eyes and a tight smile of amusement. I thought of my picture that Marika Loft now had back at her gallery in London. Hadn't taken me long to paint that at all. The artist must have worked on this one for months, if not years. It was huge. "Who's he?" said Mason. "I reckon that's Basil Warrington Jones, the artist," I said. "He looks exactly like the man in the newspaper." As I stared at the portrait, I imagined his lips moving. "Think you can solve my riddle, do you, young Cole? Go on then, let's see what you can do." "I'll take some photos," said Mason, getting his phone out of his bag. He took 3 photographs from different angles, and then I heard my phone ping as he sent them to me. We stood and stared at the painting for a little while longer, and then Mason turned at me. "Now what?" he said. I shrugged. "We don't really know what we're meant to be looking for, do we?" said Mason. "No wonder no one's ever sold it. Where do we even start?" I kept my eyes fixed on the man in the painting. Mason was right. What were we trying to find? Mason sighed as he stared at the painting on his phone, expanded his fingertips as he zoomed in. "Hang on," he said. "There's something in the grass." He turned his phone to me. There were 2 brown-coloured ears poking out from the undergrowth by the base of the trees. "What is it?" I said, trying to zoom in closer. I looked up at the painting on the wall and squinted. It was so dark and murky it was hard to see from here, but it was much clearer on the phone. "I think it's some kind of dog, but the ears are too big," said Mason. "It looks like a wolf." He handed the phone to me. He was right. It looked like a coyote from the cartoons he'd showed me at his party. We grinned at each other. "So now what?" I said. Mason frowned. Basil had said the clues were hidden in the painting, and this wolf is hiding in the grass, so this could be the first clue. "Let's have a think. What do we know about wolves?" "Little Red Riding Hood," I said. "Howling, full moons." "There's a werewolf," said Mason, laughing. I tried to think what else I knew about werewolves, but that was it. "Hang on. This museum might have a stuffed wolf in the Natural History wing," said Mason. "Could the clue in the painting be sending us to another part of the new building?" "Maybe," I said as the word sunk in. "We've got nothing to lose. Let's check it out." We both spun round and headed back to the hall full of the taxidermy animals. Mason was faster than me, and he ran to the far end of the room. "Look, this could be it," he shouted. I joined him in front of a display of 4 wolves standing beside some artificial shrubs. Their dark, glassy eyes stared at nothing. We looked all around the display but couldn't find anything. "There's got to be something," I said. "Let me have another look at this picture." Mason passed his phone to me. "I don't think it's a wolf. It doesn't look quite like these." "Hello, Cole." "Hi, Mason." It was Mum. She came through a door marked private, carrying a huge bundle of papers. "Dr. Sabine said that you were here." "Hi, Mum." I said. "Is everything okay?" She said. "I haven't seen you in here for a long time." "Mrs. Miller, we're trying to find an animal like this one. Do you know where it might be?" said Mason, showing her the close-up photo. Mum frowned as she examined it. "It's definitely not a wolf. Its ears are too big," she said. "It looks more like a jackal to me." Mason grinned. "Excellent," he said, looking around. "So where's the stuffed jackal?" Mum shifted the heavy bundle of papers to over her hip. "There's no taxidermy of a jackal in the museum," she said. "What's all this for?" "Oh, we did a school project," said Mason. "We need to find it for research. Is there anything else related to a jackal in here?" She thought about it. "Like a canopic jar, you mean?" she said. I remembered learning about canopic jars in primary school when we studied the ancient Egyptians. We had a go at making one out of clay. "What's a canopic jar again?" asked Mason. "During the mummification process, all the major body organs are placed in canopic jars. There were 4 in all: the stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver. The jar with the head of a jackal represents a god called Dunamutef. Dunamutef? I don't know if I'm saying that right. The stomach was placed in a jar," said Mum. I grinned at her. That was a really cool thing to know. "Oh, that's well gross," said Mason. Mum began to walk across the room towards the foyer. "Right, I've got tons of paperwork to do. We're closing up for the day now, so you 2 better get yourselves home." "Are there any canopic jars in this museum?" I asked, quickly following her. Mum pushed her way through the heavy doors and dumped the papers on the desk. "Yeah, we have some in the Egyptian gallery," she said. My spine tingled. This was brilliant. All we needed to do was find the jar with the jackal's head and take a look inside. "Come on, let's go," said Mason. "Well, hang on a minute," said Mum. "I told you, we're closing for the day. You have to come back another time." She looked fed up with us, but I knew it was just because she was under so much stress and she didn't realise I was trying to help. "We'll only be 5 minutes, please," I begged. Mum went to the wall and turned the lights off and the room went dark. "Home, Cole. No more discussion," she said. "I'll be back after I've got through this lot. I'll see you later." She went through the door marked private as we made our way back to the glowing green exit sign. I shivered as we walked past the dead animals in the darkness. "Mason," I whispered, stopping to look at the tiger with its jaws open wide. "Do you think Basil's treasure is in the museum somewhere?" Mason shrugged. "Who knows? I don't expect he thought anyone would actually solve the riddle. Let's come back tomorrow and find the jackal jar and see if there's anything else there." I stared at the tiger's teeth and at the muscles rippling on its shoulders. It was in a crouched position, as if it was getting ready to pounce. "No," I said, "this can't wait any longer. I need to find that treasure fast. Let's go and look now. Be really quiet so Mum doesn't catch us." When we got to the foyer, I glanced up at the artist staring down from his own oil painting. His eyes twinkled in the gloom, and I thought he saw his moustache twitch. I shuddered as we crept up the stairs to Egyptian Gallery. It felt like Basil Warrington Jones was watching us. I'm going to stop there for today. See what happens next, see if they find the jackal in the jar. I am going to read Story tomorrow, even though it's bank holiday, so you can watch it if you choose, if you're still doing work. If not, maybe you could double up next week. Have a lovely VD day tomorrow if you're doing anything nice, and have a lovely weekend.